But now I want to bring up Matt Morton to do a proper introduction for Eduardo. Matt Morton is a PhD student in his final year here in our doctoral program studying poetry. So let me bring up Matt.
Good evening. I'm excited to introduce to you tonight this evening's reader, Eduardo C. Corral. One of the preeminent poets of his generation, Corral has already amassed an impressive and intimidating list of awards and honors. He has been recognized with the Discovery the Nation Prize, a Whiting Writers Award, and a Creative Writing Fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts. He has held the Colgate University Olive B. O'Connor Fellowship and the Philip Roth Residency at Bucknell University. Most recently, he was a Hodder Fellow at Princeton University, which also awarded him the 2016 Holmes National Poetry Prize. Corral's first book, Slow Lightning, was chosen by Carl Phillips for the 2012 Yale Younger Poets Prize, perhaps the most prestigious prize a first book of poetry can receive. And he has a second book, Guillotine, forthcoming from Grey Wolf Press. He currently teaches in the MFA program at North Carolina State University. As we make our way through the poems in Slow Lightning, and as you will undoubtedly experience hearing some of them being read tonight, it becomes immediately clear why Corral's work deserves both the accolades it has received and our complete attention. Poetry in this country is often lazily derided for existing separately from the so-called real world, and Corral's poems serve as an emphatic rebuttal to this claim. These poems ask pressing questions about identity, about what it means to be gay, or Latino, or an illegal American, indeed, what it means to be an American. In this way, the poems in Slow Lightning seem eerily prescient, as if Corral had anticipated half a decade ago the ways in which these labels would be manipulated today to inspire fear and ignorance and misunderstanding of our fellow human citizens. By contrast, Corral's poems vigorously interrogate the simplicity of these labels. His poems argue that the self cannot be so easily contained, that the almost unbelievable complexity of a particular person cannot be summarized by that person's race or gender or language or place of origin. These poems challenge our comfortable notion of a fixed self. They force us to recognize that identity is fluid, constantly changing, and only fully realized when constructed categories and artificial borders are torn down. As Carl Phillips writes in his introduction to Slow Lightning, quote, "In Corral's refusal to think in reductive terms lies his great authority." We witness this authority in poems like Self-Portrait with Tumbling and Lasso, in which the speaker's delightful imaginative play asserts that he contains multitudes. Indeed, like each of us, the speaker is multitudes. He says, "I'm coming on strong like a missionary. I'm kicking back my legs like a mule. I'm kicking up my legs like a showgirl." The authority of these poems also lies in their vivid, at times surreal imagery and the clarity and precision of their syntax. In the poem titled, "In Colorado My Father Scoured and Stacked Dishes," the speaker recalls how, "In Tucson my father branded cattle. He slept in a stable. The horse blankets oddly fragrant, wood smoke, lilac. He's an illegal. I'm an illegal American. Once in a grove of saguaro at dusk I slept next to him. I woke with his thumb in my mouth." As these lines demonstrate, complex thought and feeling are often best expressed not through showboating elusiveness or easy fragmentation, but through simplicity and directness, through a clarity that is the only true indicator of a rigorous mind. I return again and again to Corral's poems because I find myself inspired by his courage to confront the complexity of his subjects, by his sincere effort to communicate to his readers, to teach us what he himself has learned. And I'm thrilled that we have the opportunity to hear some of those poems tonight. Please join me in welcoming Eduardo C. Corral.
Thank you, Matt, for that wonderful introduction. Can everybody hear me? Thank you, Corey. Thank you, everybody here at UNT, for this welcoming and gracious start to my visit here. I had a great time yesterday and today. Thank you for the Q&A session earlier today. Wonderful questions were asked. Made me think a little deeper than I usually like to think on a Thursday, so thank you for that. I'm going to begin with the first poem from the book, which is an ekphrastic poem, inspired and informed by a piece of art. And the title will tell you everything about the piece that kind of triggered this poem. This poem borrows lyrics from the Prince song Little Red Corvette, which my oldest nephew Alexi likes to say is the best part of the poem, but you can be the judge of that yourself. Art Completion, Oil and Wood, Tina Rodriguez, 1999. Before nourishment, there must be obedience. In his hands, I was a cup overflowing with thirst. Eighth ruler of my days, ninth lord of my nights, he thrashed above me like branches. Once, after weeks of rain, he sliced a potato in half to remind me of the moon. The dark slept in the small of his back, the back of his knees, pale music. We'd crumble the Eucharist and feed it to the pigeons. Si vergüenza, escuincle, he who makes things sprout. In the margins, in a book of poems by Emily Dickinson, he scribbled, she had a pocket full of horses, Trojan, and some of them used. Often, I mistook him for a storyteller when he stood in the rain. A su izquierda, huesos. A su derecha, mapas de cuero. When I'd yawn, he'd pluck black petals out of my mouth. I was born and raised in a very small town in southern Arizona called Casa Grande, and I grew up surrounded in the 70s and 80s by cotton fields. Most of them are gone now, mostly just tract housing and mini strip malls. But as a boy, I remember running through those fields in the dead of summer, 110, 115, and shivering because I was pretending that the cotton was snow. Then I remember running back home in the middle of July and asking my mother for a coat because it was snowing. And I still remember the look on her face like, what is wrong with you? That look hasn't changed much quite often. The blindfold. I draw the curtains. The room darkens, but the mirror still reflects a crescent moon. I pull the crescent out, a rigid curve that softens into a length of cloth. I wrap the cloth around my eyes, and I'm peering through a crack in a wall, revealing a landscape of snow. And that's the reason why there's a lot of snow in the book that's rooted in the desert of Arizona. This next poem is titled Watermark. And this poem, I borrow two phrases from the Gwendolyn Brooks poem, A Boy Breaking Glass. And this poem also repeats the word socorro. When you call out that word urgently in Spanish, socorro, socorro, it becomes a call for help. I need help. This is an emergency. And socorro also happens to be my mother's name. You see what I did there, right? I am a master of the fine arts. Don't let everybody tell you. Watermark. In the dark, only the devil can cast a shadow. Too poor to afford lilies, she walked down the aisle holding a glass of milk. Her left breast is nicknamed Juan, the right Diego. Nightly she catches moths with newspaper cones, hammock skipper, southern emerald. Lungs black with cancer, her father was buried 2 months before the wedding. Her name, a tassel in my mouth. Socorro, socorro. Rain pierced her womb when she was 6 months pregnant. Rain singed the face of her child, the burn marks turning into beauty marks. Beautiful flaw, terrible ornament. I keep a spur under my pillow to ward off nightmares. Too poor to afford lace, she walked down the aisle on a cold afternoon, her breath a veil. She arranges moth wings on a table, reads the wings like tarot cards, 9 of swords, knight of coins. Her mouth waters when she hears a bolero. Her father was buried in pleated pants. Day after day she folds and folds paper, alas, farros. She gave me a pack of cigarettes on my 13th birthday. Often I put on the gold ring she leaves by the sink. Not cathedrals, but presents. The first man she saw naked was the rain. The dark of her knees, a watermark. Socorro, socorro. If I dream I'm cupping her face with my hands, I wake up holding the skull of a wolf. I often wish I hadn't written this poem because, eventually one's parents disappear. And I don't think I'll be able to read this poem when that day happens. The next poem, the title is an on-ramp title, like an on-ramp to the freeway. So the title functions as part of the first line. So the entrance in the poem is immediate and quick. Let's see. In Colorado, my father scoured and stacked dishes in a Tex-Mex restaurant. His co-workers, unable to utter his name, renamed him Jalapeno. If I ask for a goldfish, he splits a glob of phlegm into a jar of water. The silver letters on his black belt spell sangron. Once, borracho, at dinner, he said, Jesus was not a snowman. Arriba, Durango. Arriba, Orizaba. Packed into a car trunk, he was smuggled into the States. Frijolero, greaser. In Tucson, he branded cattle. He slept in a stable. The horse blankets, oddly fragrant. Wood smoke, lilac. He's an illegal. I'm an illegal American. Once, in a grove of saguaro, at dusk, I slept next to him. I woke with his thumb in my mouth. No que no tornabas, pistolita. He learned English by listening to the radio. The first 4 words he memorized, in God we trust. The 5th, percolate. Again and again, I borrow his clothes. He calls me Scarecrow. In Oregon, he picked apples, Braeburn, Jonah Gold, Cameo. Nightly, Trinitanis Cuates, around a campfire, he strummed a guitarra, sang corridos, arriba Durango, arriba Orizaba. Packed into a car trunk, he was smuggled into the States. Greaser, beaner, once borracho, at breakfast, he said, the heart can only be broken once, like a window. No mames. His favorite belt buckle, an águila perched on a nopal. If he laughs out loud, his hands tremble. Bugs Bunny wants to deport him. Cesar Chavez wants to deport him. When I walk through the desert, I wear his shirt. The gaze of the moon stitches the buttons of his shirt to my skin. The snake hisses. The snake is torn. When I first drafted this poem, as a poet, I had a hard time using the term illegal to describe the father figure in this poem. Nobody is illegal. Nobody should be illegal in this world. It's a horrible way to think of our brothers and sisters in the world. So I relied on craft. How can I use craft to get away with using that ugliness in my work? So that's why the word lilac appears on the very same line before the word illegal. So the loveliness of lilac hopefully tempers some of the ugliness of that word. I came of age in the late 80s, early 90s, at the height of the AIDS epidemic, before the cocktails, before it became a livable condition. At that time period, it was a death sentence in months or a few years, but death would visit you quickly. And once I realized I was a young gay boy, I went to the library and asked for library books about queerness, and they didn't have any, and they couldn't order any because of the rules given to them by the state government and the county. So the only imagery I had of gay men, the only role models I had were these men on the nightly news who were kissed by death in public scorn. So for the longest time, I assumed death was the only option for me as a young boy. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome. I approach a harp abandoned in a harvested field. A deer leaps out of the brush and follows me in the rain. A scarlet snake wound in its dark antlers. My fingers curled around a shard of glass. It's like holding the hand of a child. I'll cut the harp strings for my mandolin, use a frame as a window in a chapel yet to be built. I'll scrape off its blue lacquer, melt the flakes down with a candle and ladle, and paint the inner curve of my soup bowl. The deer passes me. I lower my head, stick out my tongue to taste the honey smeared on its hind leg. In the field's center, I crouch near a boulder engraved with a number and stare at a gazelle's blue ghost, the rain falling through it. It took me 9.5 years to finish my first book. And the last poem I wrote for the book was The Self-Portrait with Tumbling and Lasso. I went home and I went through all my notebooks, 9.5 years worth of notebooks. That's a lot of notebooks for me. And I pulled out every phrase and image that kind of still resonated with me, that I kind of wanted in my first book, and I stitched together those images and lines into this self-portrait. It was a way to say thank you to those notebooks. Thank you for carrying me this far, but it's time to move on. It was like a ritual. It's not you, it's me. Self-portrait with tumbling and lasso. I'm drumroll and voyeur. I am watermark and fable. I'm weaving the snarls of a wolf through my hair like ribbon. At my feet, chisels and jigsaws. I am performing an autopsy on my shadow. My ribcage, a wall. My heart, a crack in a wall. A foothold. I am tumbling upward. A French acrobat. I am judder and effigy. I am pompadour and splendid. I am spinning on a split in half. An apple in my mouth. I know what Eve didn't know. A serpent is a fruit eaten to the core. I'm a massacre of the dreamers. A terracotta soldier waiting for his emperor's return. When I bow, a black fish leaps from the small of my back. I catch it. I tear it apart. I fix the scales to my lips. Every word I utter is opalescent. I'm skinned and Orphic. I am scarlet and threshold. At my touch, a piano melts like a slab of black ice. I am steam rising, dissipating. I'm a ghost undressing. I'm a cowboy riding bareback. My soul is whirling above my head like a lasso. My right hand, a pistol. My left, automatic. I'm knocking on every door. I'm coming on strong like a missionary. I'm kicking back my legs like a mule. I'm kicking up my legs like a showgirl. My niece loves to say that you are nothing like a showgirl. Duh. I'm going to move on to some new material. New stuff. This is from my book that comes out in a couple years, titled Guillotine, which I'm very nervous about. So be nice. This poem is a persona poem, a poem where the poet adopts a mask. The speaker is a Border Patrol agent who's working in the desert between Tucson, Arizona and Nogales, Arizona. A Mexican-American Border Patrol agent in his late 40s. I think that's all you need to know about the poem. The title is not very good, but it works for the poem. So you be the judge. Border Patrol agent. I've tried so many of the titles. That's one that works. Okay. But if you have an idea, the book's not even ready for print. So. Summer is a puta. Thank you, Texas. I've been in Wisconsin and there's no reaction. Let's start again. Summer is a puta. I park beneath branches, crank up the AC in the Jeep. I hate the rearview mirror. It makes me look like my father, chaste and singed. Last week, beneath the sky, Walmart blue, in the clearing full of bottle sneakers, teepee rose, I found a body, legs gnawed to the knees, barbed wire tight around the throat. I remembered graffiti on a boater. God is always hungry. Sometimes, with binoculars, I watch wild horses hurry through the heat. Once, a yearling stopped mid-gallop, then collapsed into a bed of coals the rain could not extinguish. The radio is always crackling. 6 wets sighted on infrared. Need a spic speaker, stat. I only speak Spanish with my father. He often mistakes blue parakeets perched on the stove for gas flames. Last July, far from Tucson, I found a rape tree, torn panties draped on branches. The tree, a warning, a way for smugglers to claim terrain. Lightning climbs a hillside like a stilt walker. Rain strikes the windshield. I think of my wife, asleep on her side, breasts pressed together as if one were dreaming the other. Her womb empty, my dick useless. There are things I just can't tell her. Sometimes only body parts remain. They're buried in baby caskets. A couple of years ago, my oldest nephew, in his senior year in high school, started writing poetry to woo a young lady. And 3 weeks into the process, he texts me like, "When do we write about happy things?" When I find out, you'll be the first I text my son. I wrote this. This was one of the older poems for the new book. I think I wrote this in 2012, my first spring in New York City. And I withheld it from publication for, I think, 4 years. Ceremonial. Delirious, touch-starved. I pinch a mole on my skin, pull it off like a bead. I pinch and pull until I am holding a black rosary. Prayer will not cool my fever. Prayer will not melt my belly fat, will not thin my thighs. A copper-faced man once called me beautiful. Stupid, stupid man. I am obese. I am worthless. I can still feel his thumb, warm, burrowed, moving in my mouth. His thumbnail, a flake of sugar he would not allow me to swallow. Desperate for the sting of snow on my skin, rosary tight in my fist. I walk into a closet, crawl into a wedding dress. Oh Lord, here I am. This next poem it shares the title of the next book, but that's going to change. I don't like personally having individual poems with the same title as the book. There's so much pressure put on that book, on that title poem. So again, if you have a good title suggestion for me, please see me. Before I begin the poem, one of the big concerns of the next book is what happens when you fall in love with somebody who can return that affection, that yearning, that lust? What happens to that energy, that feeling that somebody has to carry? Where does it go? Right? And what does it do to you as you carry it through the world? Happy stuff, right? Very happy stuff. Guillotine. Isn't such a beautiful word for such a horrible thing, right? Yeah. A word that a poet would be obsessed with at the end of the day. The scorpions always arrive at dawn. Gently with their pincers, they touch the cuts on my lips. I clutch the edges of the mattress, stare at the mirrored ceiling. My mouth opens, but no sound staggers out. The scorpions, dark green, dank, reach in, pull out the razor blade under my tongue. 2 scorpions, a razor blade. Slowly, in unison, without letting go of the metal, they move. A little guillotine making its way down my body. I remember dragging my thumb through his beard, coppery and difficult. The scorpion's paws tilt the razor blade, a threat, a reminder. It's my task to stop yearning for as long as it takes them to carry a blade across my skin. My thoughts surge and swerve from monsoon storms to accordions to pecan groves. The little guillotine starts moving again. I begin to sense the enormity of my body, the razor blade high in the air. For now. I would carry the word guillotine around for like 6 to 7 months when I first moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. I see you, Emma. Hi, Emma. It's one of our graduates. So I carry this word with me, and I like to dwell with words in different ways if I can do it. So, or just go back to first grade. I really believe that all you need to know as a poet, you really learned in first grade, in kindergarten. Yeah, but don't tell that to my employees, please. So one day at a coffee shop, I just sat down with a pen. I wrote out the word guillotine again and again in my cursive. Guillotine, guillotine, guillotine. Till the whole page was filled with that penmanship, that word. And then I looked at the page and I said, "What do you see?" And what I saw was scorpions, these bugs, right? And then from there, the image of the razor blade came. This poem is titled Sentence. It borrows a line from one of my favorite Canadian poems, Don Mackay. Sentence. I crawl back. He unpacks his tools, oils the wood handles, rinses the metal. Fragrant his thighs, fragrant his sneer. Coy and eternity inked on his skin, an ecstatic blue, a bewildered green. Some wounds are ovals. Some wounds are opals. The ears of a white wolf pivot toward the moon. I flee now and then, alone in the desert for months, a nomad in a kimono oppressed to gather dust. Beautiful his throat, his words even more beautiful. It's my turn to ask a bit more from you. He likes it when I bleed. Strangers once. Gently, he hammers gold into a sentence. Gently, the sentence enters me. Half of the new book is a sequence of poems, and all the poems in that sequence have the same title, Testament Scratched into a Water Station Barrel. In southern Arizona, human rights organizations have set these water barrel stations on paths known to be used by immigrants. So if they see the water stations, they have access to water in the crippling heat of Arizona. When I first saw these photographs of these water station barrels, in my mind, these barrels became texts, spaces for these immigrants to inscribe their wishes, their fears, their confessions, right? For them to be visible via language. So I'll read a couple of these. The speaker of this poem is a father who might be near death, remembering home. Testament scratched into a water station barrel. Far from highways I flicker, goad the whispering gasoline. If I pinch her nipples too hard, no joy for her, no joy for me. So I practice on ticks, press them just so they give but do not burst. Beneath my boots, thistle and puncture vine. A wild horse asleep on all fours, its shadow still grazing. My lips black meat, my tongue black meat. In my backpack, sardine tins, saltines, and a few cough drops. The moon is my library. There's a glacier inside a grain of salt. Do you understand? I'm sorry, my Albanian isn't very good. Tremble if God forgets you. Tremble if God remembers you. Out of clay, I shape sparrows. I glaze their bills and claws. I give them names like Gossamer, Inglenook, Lagoon. She bathed a trumpet in milk, her tenderness acoustic and plural, her pupils perched in all that green. There's nudity around the corner, bones cracked and iridescent. Sometimes it rains so hard, even the moon puts on a raincoat. Zinc raz, zinc jazz. I notch my arms, I notch my thighs. 5-6 days, I score my skin, but not the back of my knees. 2 ovals, 2 portraits. My son at 10, his eyes ablaze. My son at 1, his eyes shut. Once I dressed him in burlap. Once bicycles and marbles. Once I tore rain out of a parable to strike down his thirst. The last lines come from what I thought was lyrics to an Arcade Fire song. And I was so envious, like, why did you Canadians come up with this language? But then I was like, let me Google these lyrics. And nope, I had misheard, so it's all mine. Another Testament poem. This is a young gay man writing to his father. Apa is another way to say father in Mexican Spanish, in most Spanish. Apa, dying is boring. To pass las horas, I carve our last name all over my body. I try to recall the taste of Pablo's sweat. Whiskey, no. Wet dirt, sí. I stuff English into my mouth, spit out chingaderas. Have it your way, home of the Whopper, run for the border. Aguas, the mirror betrayed us. Erased your face from my face, gave me mother's smile, narrow nariz. Once I wore her necklace, the gold slick obscene. God, I was beautiful. Cada noche I sleep with dead men. The coyote was a third to die. Your money is still in his wallet. Quien engaña, no gana. Apa, there's a photo in my bolsillo of a skeleton shrouded in black flames. Nuestra Señora de la Santa Muerte, patron saint of smugglers, pickpockets, and jotos. La Flaca, Señora Negra, La Huesuda. Aguas, an animal is prowling the station. It shimmies with hunger, it shimmers with thirst. To keep it away, I hurl my memories at it. Your laughter is now snagged on its fangs. Your pain now breathes inside its lungs. Taste the feeling. Siempre Coca-Cola, America's real choice. I gathered and smashed bottles. Apa, follow the glass snaking from the barrel to mesquite to find my body. Lips blue, skin thick with scabs. Apa, kneel in the shade. Peel the scabs. Touch our last name, Solis. This third Testament poem is the voice of a daughter, mother, thinking of what is she carrying from home in Mexico to a new life in the United States. In the desert, the moon shivers. Tonight, to stay awake, I'll cut my feet with glass. Outside Oaxaca, in a clinic, my mother said, I hate your Indian face. In the dream, I'm running, my limbs skeletal and scabbed. After my mother's death, I found in a box her wedding dress. As I lifted the lid, a stench corkscrewed into my nostrils. The dress had curdled like milk. During the day, I gather tinder with a ER. During the day, somebody asked me, like the app? No. During the day, I gather tinder, paper, shed snakeskin. When the last light above the mountains knots into stars, I crouch under mesquite, make a fire. Sometimes the moon stops shivering. Sometimes I tally what I owe. In the dream, I'm running through a hallway, the floor uneven, the walls green. Last month, as my son blew out the candles on his cake, I noticed, for the first time, the hideous shape of his nose. Tonight, I'll pinch my thighs to stay awake. My mother in the clinic said, Lorraine has a fever and needs plenty of rest and needs to drink plenty of water. The doctor scribbled in a file, then asked for more money. If my mother could see me now, my feet bloody, my face darker than ever. Tonight, to stay awake, I'll sit close to the fire. In the dream, I stumble, but I never let go of my right breast. An urn heavy with my own ashes. An urn I'm lugging God knows where. I want to finish with one poem from the book, and thank you for your wonderful attention. Let me see. There's something you want me to read I haven't read from the book? Not all at once, please. One? Okay. Oh, great. And we're going to end on a nasty poem. Okay, this is the second to last poem because I cannot end on this note. I'm a lapsed Catholic, but you still carry it with you. The word coyote in this poem, like in the previous poem, means somebody who smuggles people across borders into different spaces. Because there's a lot of coyotes in my work for obvious reasons. I talk about the border, smuggling, immigration issues. But growing up, when I would hear my parents or relatives say, "La coyote cruzó tu tía," a coyote just crossed your aunt, I literally thought as a boy that an animal had crossed my aunt across the desert. Want. Abandoned by his coyote, my father, sand seething beneath his sneakers, trekked through southern Arizona, maze of acacia and cholla. Cold sweat cut his face like a razor. In his pocket, a fine-toothed comb, dice, and a photo of a girl playing violin. On the third day, he picked up a rock, killed a blue lizard with a single strike. He tore it apart, shoved guts and bones into his mouth. The first time I knelt for a man, my lips pressed to his zipper, I suffered such hunger. What are you guys being taught at this university? I got suspicions. Okay, I want to end with a poem that I just finished for the new manuscript. I used to do that more often, but when the book came out, I got really gun-shy about new material. I'm going to end with this poem. Thank you again for your attention, and I'm going to break my own rules and read off my phone. So pretentious. This poem is titled, Around Every Circle Another Can Be Drawn, which is drawn from Emerson. Diminished but quick, I sprint into the desert toward a dust devil. Slowly twisting along a canal, I step into the grit and whirl. Not dust, after all, but a spiral of locust, each a coil of gold, oiled with honey. Long hind legs click, click, click. Not one alights on my skin. I recall his hesitation, his apologies. A thunderhead on the horizon shimmers. Half-built cathedral. What a saint said about God, I believe about loneliness. A circle whose center is everywhere, but its circumference nowhere. The locusts scatter. Around my feet, a circle of sand. Around the sand, a circle of grass. I kneel. His name evaporates in my mouth. The grass is dusty. I lift the dust like a veil. I lean close. All that green, yearning for a kiss. Gracias. Thank you. Reader Emerson. Gracias. Thank you so much.